The following is rated not safe for work. It contains strong language, adult situations, and lots of spoilers. Discretion is advised.
In the criminal justice system, cinematic-based offenses are considered especially heinous. The dedicated attorneys who investigate these villainous films are members of an elite squad known as the Reels of Justice. These are their stories.
Order, please, order. The Reels of Justice is now in session. Judge Dylan J. Schlender presiding. Your eyes for the Honorable Judge Schlender.
Be seated. Welcome to the Reels of Justice. Today we are hearing the case of The People versus Event Horizon, a 1997 sci-fi horror film that follows a rescue crew as they investigate a derelict ship that has just mysteriously returned from deep space. For those of you unfamiliar with our court proceedings, we are here to determine if this film is guilty of being a bad movie. As always in this courtroom, films are to be considered excellent until proven awful, and the burden of proof lies upon the prosecution to prove beyond a shadow of a reasonable doubt that this film is guilty. Mr. Big Ben Haslar, you are representing the prosecution. You may present your opening statement.
Thank you, Your Honor. Full disclosure, members of the court, I hold the current record for most films recommended that ended up going to trial. And even as I utter the words, my recommendation for this week, Event Horizon, I knew that this day was looming. And I have bad news for defense attorney Isaac Arthur sitting over there. This court loves to play with the feelings of its prosecutors. Often we win the ones we want to lose and lose the ones we want to win. I want to lose this case. So sorry, buddy, you're screwed. Neither of us is walking away happy today, all right? So just get used to it. Because I have been assigned a job, so my aim is to do this to the best of my ability, even though I wanted to rip my eyes out in order to prevent myself from seeing Event Horizon's flaws, which are many. The chief among these being it's a victim of the same problems a lot of 90s sci-fi films have. You see, the 90s were all about being extreme. I don't know, boss, a worker might have said. I don't think the CGI technology is quite there yet for what you want to do. Would practical effects be more extreme, the advertisers would ask? Well, no, but we gotta go extreme! Extreme! And there you have it. In the modern era, we're sitting here looking at these dated choices, all the way from cameras spinning through CGI, ships with pipes and scaffolding, regardless of whether or not such a design would make sense for the ship, all the way to its techno closing song of all from Paul W.S. Anderson, the mind behind Alien vs. Predator, those terrible Resident Evil movies, and of course, Mortal Kombat!
Oh my God, extreme indeed. Thank you, Mr. Haslar. Appearing on behalf of the defense is Mr. Isaac Arthur. Please present your opening statement.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I watched this film live in the theater on opening night when it came out, and I was a teenager at the time, and it was the first time I'd been scared by a movie and had nightmares about it in years. And I grew up watching Hellraiser. That was a very, very scary movie, and a very rare thing for that era. If you look at the 90s for science fiction, you've got maybe one other good sci-fi horror movie, and that's The Cube. Event Horizon, The Cube are the good ones from that era. It has a good callback to aliens in it. It's a very good setup for basic science fiction. You're alone, you're stranded on the ghost ship with the evil monster running around. Only in this case, the evil monster isn't a crazy alien. It's one of your own, and it's plausible. Sam Neill does an amazing job in the character, fresh off Jurassic Park. We can see Lawrence Fishburne right before he gets in The Matrix. He's an excellent actor, and it shows. And it's not just to them. The acting in this film for a horror movie is excellent. And we have to judge any movie by what it is. For science fiction of that era and for horror movies of that era, it managed to get across the line. It's a good, solid film. It's so good you want to keep watching it until you rip your eyes out. That's all we got to say for the moment. We're looking forward to hear what the prosecution has to say.
All right, thank you, Mr. Arthur. And
Am I the only one who wants to keep his eyes?
Maybe. I feel like we're giving Sphere short shrift, but maybe I should strike that from the record.
The eyes have it.
Duly noted.
All right. For another time. Mr. Haslar, you may proceed with your first exhibit.
Well, I noticed the defense attorney, he kept saying for that era again and again. And you need to keep that in mind because it is dripping with 90s, like the way they present the future. It kind of goes like with this clackety clack sort of as it's like typing across the screen, rather than just displaying the messages as they had the technology to do even then. So I don't understand. This is clearly the future that they're depicting here. And then we got big clunky iPads. We got people with their QWERTY clackety clack keyboards. I'm pretty sure I saw someone using a compact disc at some point. We have videos. We did. I know. I'm serious. And people are playing videos, and the videos have like the time codes and these play, stop, rewind buttons like on top of the video. This is clearly bad design that seemed very cool in 90s at the time because you're just like, ooh, QuickTime player, that's neat. But they didn't think forward enough. People are wearing T-shirts with their names and ranks printed upon them. What if they get dirty? What if the shirt gets burned up? Like, what is the point of even this? We have dog tags. They exist right now in the 90s. They are more efficient for if someone dies. What is the point of these T-shirts? They just think it makes it look futuristic and cool. So my question to the defense is this a believable future that they're depicting here?
I would say in many ways, yes. Yeah, absolutely. When you look at it, for one thing, I think there's a prequel movie to the Warhammer 40,000 universe. It's grim, it's gritty, and it does it better than so much of the stuff in the 90s. Yes, a lot of stuff in the 90s went for that flavor. With them, there is a certain kind of submarine feeling of this place has some slightly old and antiquated technology. They're going to a ship that is the cutting edge and a prototype, and they themselves are on a relatively normal ship. And if you look at technology in the military nowadays, you'd be amazed. I mean, I was there. We always had stuff that was like 20, 30 years out of date in terms of appearance because they went for what still works, what's proven, what's rugged, not what's brand new.
That 8-track ain't going nowhere, baby.
It gives a great vintage flavor, too. It does.
All right, so Mr. Haslar, if you'd like to expand on this 90s aesthetic or move on to your next point.
My second point is tertiarily related to that. It's the design of this, of all the ships in this, from the space stations to the Lewis and Clark ship that Fishburne commands to the Event Horizon itself. The design of all these ships is all wrong. Why is Anderson so utterly convinced that his new ability to spin through these things with the camera and CGI is so cool? He has like this huge tunnel like in the Event Horizon so he can achieve this effect, and I never caught for a moment given a reason why it has this long tunnel. They say in passing that if you detonate the tunnels you can use the forward section as sort of a lifeboat, but never explain why that wouldn't be accomplishable with a shorter frame or like a saucer separation like in Star Trek Next Generation. There's no reason for these long scaffoldings to exist. And speaking of Star Trek, the Lewis and Clark bridge is clearly stolen from that show, except for Fishburne's chair, because he gets to like zoom around, and I guess that's just like so he can sort of like micromanage and like and go over to someone's over their shoulder, and like I don't think that's what you're doing, and then he zooms over here. I don't understand what this chair is about. You'd owe royalties big time to Star Trek if this film also weren't distributed under current rights holder Paramount. But at least the Trek designs sort of made sense. This just makes it in this more extreme fashion that just doesn't work. What is the scientific purpose of these spikes that with these intricate rune-like designs and etchings that they have and these huge long tunnels? In Galaxy Quest, they have like those chopping blocks. They literally have that in this movie with that meat grinder tunnel. There's no reason for this thing to exist. I was waiting for that joke in Galaxy Quest to happen. Clearly OSHA has been dissolved by the year 2040. Now I pass.
So when I was working at White Paris as an intern way back, like a year after this movie got made, one of the first things that struck me about one of the rooms there where we did this stealth technology with sonic waves, right, was it was covered. The floor was covered, the ceiling was covered in these spikes, these big giant spikes. And they were there to absorb the acoustics. So I went back and watched that movie afterwards. And at the same time I watched Cube, I got to rewatch as a rerun. Was, wow, those actually make sense. They're probably there to absorb something coming in. And that's exactly how you absorb waves, is with gigantic spiky bits. So they didn't say, and we can't assume, but they look cool too. And with the bridge cliche, let's be honest. Until Battlestar Galactica came out, and the remake, not the original, everybody went for the bridge. It was a classic, iconic bridge. And just because something's a cliche doesn't mean it's wrong. It gives you can change up and be new, but that's more time your audience has to focus on it and be unsure what it is. You show people the classic Star Trek bridge, they know where they are. They're the place where everything runs. Then you want something that shows the main engineer, you put some stuff, pipes in with steam coming out of them. I don't know what the steaming pipes do, but they might be running just a regular old engine. Even to this day, in the most high-tech nuclear power plant, the thing still runs on steam. It's just nuclear power runs off of gamma radiation, making the steam hot. So that might be how their ship works too. But you know where you are, and some of these things have to be given to the audience to cut down the time. Use the visual to explain what we're at. And they know what an engineering section looks like. They know what a prototype looks like. And they know what a hunk of junk looks like. And they're trying to go for all three flavors at times. As the science itself, well, the biggest problem here is they went with the title Event Horizon, and they keep talking about black holes, but when they describe a wormhole, and then they actually describe you the system, it's not quite the same thing. Wormhole takes you from one place in the universe to another, no points in between. You're sliding along normal universe, just through a kind of a pocket there. What they have there is more like a jump to hyperspace, some other dimension that you're moving through. And in this case, it happens to be hell, which is entirely scientifically plausible compared to certain other cosmological models I could point to. So I never have a problem with that part of hell. It's cool. It's awesome. Again, it's got that early Warhammer 40,000 flavor to it that really helps it sink out very well. It's a good introduction with a scientific flavor, and as it goes, it's actually just as hard a sci-fi as Star Trek is, to be honest. So they, or at least they're solid. They get a good reason for why the thing works, and I think it helps to make Mr. Neo a much more believable villain, because you've got a scientist aboard who seems like he should be smart and deranged.
On your point about like the Event Horizon and sort of a scientific flavor, you like sci-fi films just like I do. How many more films are we going to have to sit through where they explain folding space? I get so bored every single time I have someone do it with piece of paper and like, see the 2 points come together. I see it so many times. I'm sick to death of it. When will it end, Isaac? When will it end?
Hopefully soon. And the worst thing is, probably the worst point on this movie is they go through that explanation. It's one of the best explanations I've actually seen given forward in the movie. They keep it simple and straightforward, and yet it actually doesn't describe what that engine does. It's a completely different system, but
which was the question they asked, right? Yeah, it doesn't explain like why it like shows like that sort of black tunnel like within it, right? Like that's not is that a wormhole? What is
the special effects, where they should just use the old classics from like folks like Asimov and Heinlein, the grandmaster of science fiction. They're called that for a reason. In science fiction, they express why does our FTL system work? They say it does, and leave it there.
Are you supporting Asimov just because he has your same first name? That's not fair.
Just because I'm named after him.
That's the same reason I like Ben Affleck movies.
Yeah.
That's why.
Order in my court, Ben. If you'd like, I'm curious though. You guys have been talking a lot about the sci-fi. Would you like to touch on some of the horror elements, maybe?
Sure. On this crew of stereotypes, I'm not sure that there's anything that's like truly new going on here. For example, they use the use of Dutch angles so much that it's like Battlefield Earth. That is just such an old technique. It's like,
objection.
It's off kilter now. It was shown guilty.
No, that's not in this courtroom. That's for another time.
And the problem, though, beyond the Dutch angles, is it's super repetitive. Like nothing is new. They just do the same thing again and again. Guys see scary image from their past. Oh, nobody believes them. And he's like, I'm telling you, I saw it. And they're like, no, that's impossible. And it's on endless repeat as they just drop one after the other. You're maybe engaged for like the first couple, but then you just have to like sprinkle in these like military "I'm coming in, Mama Bear" to sort of like break up that monotony, because if you cut those out, you're done. Like you've seen it. That's it. And the ending is the worst. It's a dream fake out. How many horror movies am I going to have to see that cliche? Because we need some sort of last scare, right? To like leave the theater with. But we kind of resolved everything. So what are we going to do? The dream fake out. I'm tired of it. And on that, the prosecution will rest.
Okay, Isaac, would you like to address any of the points that Mr. Haslar brought up or present a new exhibit?
Absolutely. I feel first, there was CGI in the movie, and in the 90s, that was a gamble. In the late 90s, everybody went with it, but they still did a lot of practical effects in this film. And if you watch it today, does it hold up great? I'd say it holds up at least as well as Phantom Menace, which had better effects going in. Does it hold up as well as some? No. I'd love to see more practical effects, but they did keep that. They didn't overdo the CGI to the degree others did. The Dutch angles, does it get overused, but not in the same way Battlefield Earth did. In Battlefield Earth, they only use Dutch angles. There's like the guy, he knew what they were, but he didn't know what they were for. Maybe, but they're not guilty of that level of abuse, and it predates that film, so they shouldn't be held to the standard Battlefield Earth erected for everybody else, you know? In other ones, we see Dutch angles get used better in, say, Star Trek, for instance, to show something's out of whack, something's out of line, and that's exactly what's supposed to be used for, and that's most of what the film does use it for.
Which is most of the film, though, when they're trying to do that sort of scary stuff.
Actually, could one of you describe what a Dutch angle actually is for the benefit of our listeners at home?
You hold someone under a blanket.
No, Maynard, order in my court.
I'm not a film expert, so I'll phrase it, at least as I understand it, is you turn the camera at a bit of an angle so people would see to be maybe 15, 20 degrees off, and you shoot the whole scene that way so they look like they're standing slightly on the edge. And it's to indicate, usually the purpose is to indicate that you're in a slightly warped or surreal reality or perception.
Like everything in Battlefield Earth?
Well, yeah, everything in that film.
Not guilty.
Order. I think we've talked more about Battlefield Earth than Event Horizon so far, so let's stay on topic.
I would like to stay on the Battlefield Earth point for a moment.
I would not.
Next episode. We'll have you back next episode. Next episode.
And that's the standard science fiction we had for that era. I'd also say, again, I compared it to the Cube earlier, and we can put the Sphere in there too. These are the few good science fiction horror films of that era. And they also tried to aim for not cerebral, but for a cerebral, smart flavor to a good, solid horror movie. It's not doing what Sunshine, for instance, which is one of my favorite films, but Sunshine 2007, wonderful cerebral horror film, science fiction film that tries to throw in a crazy murderer at the end. In Event Horizon, it's there the whole time. You know from the first scene when Sam Neill wakes up screaming out of stasis that this is going to be a gouge your eyes out horror film. And at the same time, it still gives us that plausible cast. Yes, all the people end up a little bit cliches. Yes, but they're not doing the classic horror film cliche of your crazy teenagers getting murdered at the lake. It's more like Alien, when we have the guys wake up from stasis and we'll introduce them and we see that, yes, they're experts at their things, but they're just normal people. There's everything about them seems believable. Even Sam Neill as their guest, the big scientist who invented the ship, comes off as a smart scientist who's fairly normal and human. They're not doing the whole crazy Spock or over-the-top sciencey guy who has no practical flavor. He comes off like someone you could talk to and have a beer with. The movie shows us regular people who are believable, not cardboard cutouts. And again, the acting's very good. Yeah, I've never heard anyone say the actress did a horrible job on this film.
Well, let's say it, Ben. Let's see what you guys say.
I mean, Lawrence Fishburne's interesting. Sam Neill is interesting, although that scream that he gives at the beginning for that first horror thing is not believable. It's like he sits there for a second. He's like, Aah! Other than that, great performance. That first scream, not so much.
I'm the judge, and even I have to agree with that.
It is less meme than his one from Mouth of Madness, though, on the bus. So.
But beyond
Sam
Lawrence
Neill's a
Fishburne,
solid actor, but yes, he can only have it up so much.
beyond those two, what is a defining characteristic that any of these military types have? It seems like stereotypes to me. You just got like a big rough and tough guy. You got a woman. Like, what else can you say about them? They don't have any characteristics.
What else do they have to say? First, we know at least half of them are going to die. That it's a horror movie, so they are going to die. We're only going to know them for 2 hours.
Don't fall in love with them. Don't make a character I fall in love with, so I feel like the pain of them leaving the film.
I think we would all agree that Alien is a very good movie. What do you remember about the characters? Not too much. They're not that deep, right? Alien or Aliens, for that matter. And again, this movie absolutely has some homage flavors towards those as good, solid early 80s classics, late 70s classics. You don't get to know the characters that much. What do you get to know about them in other ones, like Blade Runner? Amazing film, but how much do you really know? Or Sarah Connor. You have a limited amount of time on screen with these folks to get to know them, but they don't come off as believable. You could believe that they were the person doing this job, and they don't seem like they're going to do something incredibly stupid the way you'd expect out of a high school. And no one's surprised when the guys at the summer camp, get murdered by Freddy Krueger. And he doesn't really seem like that much of a smart villain, whereas it's very easy to believe that Sam Neill's character does know the engineer of the ship, does know what he's doing, can be an imposing, threatening villain, and he's also a little bit more sympathetic. You can see the guy's going out the deep end. His wife has committed suicide. We don't know why. Right? Maybe he was involved in that, maybe not. We know that his big life project had disappeared as a failure, and now suddenly reappeared and gives him a tantalizing hope. He very much comes off like someone who would go crazy if shaken the right way. And that's exactly what we see. And does the movie have the crazy horror overtones? Yes, at times, but it's a horror movie. It's going to check those boxes. And it does. This is a scary movie. It's supposed to be a scary movie. It's a horror movie. It checks that box very well. It does not come off in the least bit as, oh, I didn't find that scene horrifying at all. No. Anyone who watches this film goes, oh my God, this is terrifying. And that's even without the deleted scenes, which are just scary. So in
Are
that
there?
regard,
Oh, I need to check that out. I haven't seen them.
oh yes, they are terrifying.
There's a whole deleted movie.
Yeah. So
Maybe they should have used those then.
It may exist on VHS somewhere in Bulgaria. All right. Would
this
you like?
film? It does what it's supposed to do. It says I'm a scary science fiction horror movie, and it checks that box. You have to judge it by what it is, and it checks that box. So it's a good movie. It deserves to be watched, and it deserves not to be found guilty.
All right, Mr. Haslar, would you like to respond to any of those points before we move on?
No, I think it tries to do what it's trying to do. It's just like with people just saying like, I need a characteristic. Let's just have them call him Mama Bear. I don't know. I need more than that. And if there are more scary scenes, it's a shame we didn't put those in the actual movie because the theatrical cut is what's on trial here.
All right, fair enough. Hey, Isaac, you mentioned like this fan theory of this being a prequel to the 40K universe. Could you explain that a little bit for everyone at home? Because I think that's very interesting.
For those who don't know the Warhammer setting, probably best known from Dawn of War video games, in this place, it's in the distant far future. It's a grim, horrible place where humanity has an empire of 1 million worlds, and they travel between them through fast and light travel that literally goes to hell.
Oh.
They master travel through the warp, and they go into the warp to travel between places, and it's full of demons. And
well, there's
sometimes
more to it than that, though, right? I mean, like there's like Grey Knights and whatever. Knights.
If you ever want to see people with gigantic science fiction weapons and huge machine guns firing on demons, blowing up Hellspawn, that's the one for you. It makes Doom look soft.
All right. And so, how would this work as prequel? You're saying that the Event Horizon went into the warp.
Into the warp. There was the first ship to discover travel into the warp, and that many years down the road, they get to do the same thing. And I would say that, again, like Doom, it definitely has that parallel of you've gone and you've opened up a portal to another reality, and that reality is the most terrifying thing you can imagine. And that does open up a lot of room for the audience, because this is one of those films when you're done watching it, it stays in your head. You know, again, it's very much like Hellraiser that way. It stays in your head, whereas something like Freddy Krueger or Jason Voorhees, they don't stick around. And that's what a movie like this should do. It should make you think, and it should make you scared.
All right.
Well, I think it's more akin to like Lovecraft. The only thing I know about like Warcraft is I tried to play it once. The book was like as thick as a steak with all these rules and dice and whatever. And I could not paint those stupid little dumb figures the way I wanted to do with their little tiny visors. And you got to glue the little tiny arm and the little tiny gun on it. It was so infuriating.
Well, it's a story that's saying it's very based on Dune and Lovecraft and a few others like Michael Moorcock, for instance. Yeah. So it has those same kind of overtones. And again, it's exactly that cosmic horror genre that Lovecraft did well at. This is, again, Event Horizon's strength. It taps into that same deep, dark mystery of the eternal void. And it's a good Fermi paradox answer, too, of that big question of where all these ancient alien civilizations eat for us, which is a popular topic of my show, is something must have happened, so they either didn't exist or something happened to them. And it does fill that voice as well. Maybe these things pop up like us a lot with their spaceships, but once they get out there into the universe, they find out that it's a very dark and cold place, and they don't survive it very long. And so Event Horizon plays that very natural fear we have of the dark forest, you know?
Ooh, I like that angle. All right. Would you like to rest there, Mr. Arthur?
I believe so. This movie is so good that it doesn't require initial defense.
All right. All sides have rested their cases. The attorneys will now present their closing arguments. Mr. Haslar, you may begin.
In astrophysics, an event horizon is a boundary beyond which the events cannot affect the observer, and I dare say if you are into Lovecraft or Star Trek, the title could not be more apt, as there is very little for you to latch onto. This is a very niche film. An event horizon is a plane of gravity so strong that even light cannot escape it, and there's no escaping your fate in that jury room today. vote guilty or not, I lose either way. So it is what it is. What I was curious about is there's this great episode in Stargate SG-1 where they open a wormhole to a collapsing event horizon, and the gravity's so strong it's sucking time in. So I wondered if the defense attorney would like to spend some of his closing argument telling me if such a thing is possible. Thank you, Your Honor.
Oh, absolutely. Again, Event Horizon as a movie doesn't need all that much of a defense, so we can certainly divulge out of that topic.
I love the confidence. Let's make it official, though, real quick.
Would run slower through a wormhole on the other side. That's exactly where the paradoxes come into play, and that's why you have to worry about them so much as time machines. But before we go off into that, I feel obliged to say the last bit for Event Horizon. Again, this film in the late 90s is one of the few gems of the science fiction horror film genre. It's a great film. The acting is solid. The effects are solid for their age. It actually does age well as a cult classic. It's a movie that does what it's supposed to do. Scare the hell out of you. So if you believe that's what you have to judge this thing by, that it does what it says it's going to do, then you must absolutely find that this movie is innocent.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Arthur. And thank you, Mr. Haslar. And thank you, members of the jury, Mr. Dylan J. Yeah, well, I'm going to get to you next, I promise. Mr. Dylan J. Schlender, Mr. Maynard Bangs.
That's me.
And Mr. Where we're going, we won't need eyes to see, Ryan Luis Rodriguez. You have all heard the facts concerning this case. It is now up to you to determine if this film is guilty of being a bad movie. The bailiff will escort you to the deliberation room to render your verdict.
Right this way. I tell you, this movie was so 90s, I think we should consider ourselves lucky Sam Neill Dene have frosted tips.
That would be the early 2000s, bailiff. Excuse me.
Well, in Scotland, it was a little ahead of its time. I got nothing.
Scotland works.
You're right. It's terrible. I feel bad.
All right, so I heard we didn't need eyes to see Ryan, but that's okay because we still got arms to hug.
Aw.
I know. Ryan, let's toss it to you first. What are you thinking?
Sure. I like this movie. I would put it at a gentleman's 6. It's not necessarily something that I love, but I have an appreciation for it. I love the idea of Clive Barker in space. I did get a lot of the Alien vibes, which is kind of, I guess, baked into the experience at this point. And so I was surprised to learn that I still like this movie. But something I don't care about in terms of defending something is saying that, well, it's a horror movie, so it has to do this. Or we must excuse this because it's a horror movie. And I think that's a cop-out. I think that horror movies do not need to adhere to a certain sense of cliches or of tropes. I think that if you're making a movie, it doesn't matter what genre it's in, you should be respectful of the entire canon of cinema. And I think that letting it off the hook for being a horror movie is a little too much of a reach.
But now, you being the self-proclaimed resident wuss here, is it scary?
If I watched this movie when it came out, when I was 11 years old, this would have scared the living shit out of me.
Okay. Well,
watching it now, not really. Not particularly. It has some hellish imagery, but it's not something that is going to stick with my nightmares for years to come.
But do you find, like, a close comparison is like Hellraiser? Do you find that horrifying?
Yeah, like I said, Clive Barker in space. So there's definitely that comparison to be made, of course.
Yeah. Stuff like that's weird because it's like, well, I'm not going to space, so I'm safe. You know? Anyway, Schlenzo, what are you thinking?
Well, so unlike Ryan, and much like I assume both prosecutors, I saw the presenters, rather, both lawyers. I saw this movie when it was contemporary, when it came out on VHS. We rented it and watched it, and I remember being like a little freaked out by it and thinking it was a little scary. Having watched it recently, though, I just gotta say, it did not hold up. Like, I know this has a bit of a cult reputation, but it's kind of, this is just happening so much on this show when we're revisiting these like mid to late 90s movies like Twister and Spawn. It's like they're just not they're just not
Oh,
good.
comparing it to Spawn, that's a low blow.
I know, but that's
a
what the
low
effects
blow.
feel like and everything, and it did just feel so put upon, and that awful soundtrack at the beginning and then at the end credits, and it's like, what are they doing? And then Ben brought up a good point. He's like, I don't think Paul Anderson's really made a good movie. Like I enjoy Mortal Kombat immensely, but I wouldn't sit here and tell you that it's good either.
I would argue this is his one good movie.
I think there's good ideas here. I think there's I think this is a story that just works so much better on paper than it does on execution, because I found myself just very bored most of the time. And I agree with Ben. I just didn't think a lot of the scary, quote unquote, scary stuff was all that scary. And I know this movie suffered a lot for the editing, but we do have to judge ultimately what we got on the screen here, Now that said, in defense of what Isaac was saying, though, I do think, we weigh intentionality very heavily. And this was supposed to be a scary space movie, and it delivers on being a scary space movie in a genre. It's a pretty sparse genre because Alien just did it so pretty much perfectly, so it's a tough genre to break into seriously. You'll have like Hellraiser in space, Jason in space, but those aren't actually going for the gusto the way this did. Like this one almost could have been
Jason X slaps.
Oh no, it does, but it's not a prestige picture, and it's not particularly scary. Like this could have
politics.
This could have been. This movie really could have been something huge. So I don't necessarily want to weigh its missed potential against it either. So I'm quite the quizzy buck.
Alien is the perfect comparison because that is a perfect movie.
Yeah,
it's one of those movies where I could watch it a million times and I could find something new in every single viewing. This is definitely chasing the ghost of Alien.
Well, the difference to me is Alien's got the alien, which is a really well executed monster, possibly the best executed monster. In cinema history, except for maybe The Thing. Like The Thing's pretty damn good. But this, you have Sam Neill running around, and when he does have his eyes ripped out, he looks pretty cool. But other than that, the trope of having the possessed human to me was always a low budget 1950s save money trope. It conquered the world. We don't have enough money to show you the monster the whole time, so it'll be in the form of a human most of the time. So I would have liked to see a real big scary monster the whole time rather than.
Oh no, that would have been terrible.
Kind of possession,
like a big demon running around the ship.
It doesn't have to be a big demon.
Is man.
No, I want the monster to be the monster, Ryan. Why?
Well, it's about going through hell and getting corrupted.
And I will say that,
which is pretty neat. I do like that.
All the movies Isaac mentioned, I thought they were all better than this one, and that's usually
even Sphere.
I haven't seen Sphere. That's got Dustin Hoffman, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's probably better than
and Sam Jackson. Oh yeah.
But like Sunshine. Like I really like Sunshine. It's like, okay, there's one where you really showed a guy going crazy.
Yeah, 10 years later, bro. I mean, come on. Like this movie did come out in 97. Yeah. We got to be a little. You have to give it a little grace, but I can't give it much.
Well, I don't think we can pat this thing on the back for coming up with Space Madness or something, which is essentially this is what it was.
Yeah, Ren and Stimpy did it first.
Exactly. I was just going to credit that with that big cabbage. I don't know.
I really do like the comparison though to 40K though. Like I think this does kind of lay some groundwork for that.
It's a fan theory, but it doesn't.
I know, but it's not. It
doesn't say anything about this film. But I'm not sure the prosecutor really got to. I don't even know if the prosecutor got to rest. I don't know. It all happened so fast.
He did. He clearly said he rested.
Anyway, so let's start locking in. Ryan, why don't you lock in first?
Oh, boy. Ben's going to hate me for this. Because I know he loves this movie. But he made such a damn good case that I couldn't pick anything else. I'm sorry, Ben. This is Guilty.
See, I'm kind of on the opposite mode. My bias is I went into this thinking Guilty, but I think Isaac did a good enough job explaining to get it into that not guilty category. Like the acting is pretty solid. Some of the effects are good, and again, the intentionality scary space, it's really tough to do. There's a reason we don't see a lot of it, because it's hard to do and it's usually not that great. But this one, I think, got it over the line today, so I'll go not guilty.
So I guess I'm the only person here who did not see this when it came out.
No, I didn't.
No, Ryan didn't either.
I didn't.
Oh, okay.
I saw it 5 years ago.
Twinsies. I thought I was seeing it for the first time for this, and it turns out I must have watched it like last year at some point, and just kind of forgot. But then when Sam Neill was all crazy, I was like, I've seen this, and I've seen this recently. So it had slipped off my brain, at least from a year waiting, so I can confirm that. Case to case, I thought Isaac actually did a lot of really good work shooting down some of the science stuff, like what are all these pipes, and that's the kind of stuff that I like to hear. That this sticks to pretty decent science fiction for the most part, except for some of a lot of the big things it does get wrong, but at least to the points Ben brought up. And I did like the performance, and I liked when they did do practical effects, so I'm gonna go not guilty on this one. So then let's get out there and tell that very handsome judge.
All right. Mr. Foreman, have you reached a verdict?
We have, Your Honor.
Oh, good.
In the case of the People versus Event Horizon, we find the accused. What the hell are these words, Schlender? I do this every week.
I'm looking right at it. It says we find the defendant.
Like you don't say it a million times.
I know, that's what I'm saying. All right. We find the defendant not guilty of being a bad movie.
Oh, right. Order in my court.
Ben is so disappointed. Oh, no.
Shut down the warp core. Event Horizon will hereby be inducted into the Warhammer 40K canon, and a movie about the Horus Heresy shall begin forthwith. Court is adjourned.
I really like how the judge said he liked the point that the judge brought up.
Yes. Yes, I did.
This is Grumbly Grumblerson, furious that I was tricked into watching this movie again. Isaac Arthur, we keep having you on this podcast for reasons I can't comprehend, but since you're here, tell us how you felt about the jury's verdict, and I'll pretend to care.
I felt like I joined to another universe, and one not full of demons. It was so good. I was just very glad to hear the jury's verdict. It was the right one to make. This film, no, not without its flaws, is a cult classic for a reason. It deserves to be on that status, and it's one that's worth watching.
Nerd! Big Ben Haslar, you keep recommending movies that become cases. Please stop! How do you feel about how this trial shook out?
You're not going to like my recommendation today, Grumbly. Yeah, as I said in my opening statement, I lose either way, but I also win either way. What I like about this show is sort of distilling all the arguments, positive and negative, onto one side or the other, and everyone gets to be their own jury and decide. I really liked that Isaac Arthur was able to distill what was good about this movie, and that I had a chance to talk about a movie I enjoy quite a bit. So it was actually a good day. Thank you.
Loser! Alright, I'm back to hibernation, which is how I describe waiting to insult whoever defends and prosecutes cases. Grumblerson, out!
That Grumbly.
I picture him like sort of parasailing off, or the fan one, the fan man.
The fan glider.
Yeah, that's how he leaves. And I heard him do it too, didn't you? I heard it.
That's what that was?
That's
yes.
Probably what that will be. Isaac, apparently you really like Warhammer 40K? Is that...
Oh, I do love it. Yeah, well, I was into that before. I think I got into 40K about the same time this movie came out. I don't remember if it was before or after, but unrelated. And I was really glad the Horus Heresy, which had started up about 5 or 6 years after this film came out, now I think about it, finally came to an end literally last month. So
I don't know what that. I don't know.
After 63 books.
Is it a storyline?
Oh yeah, it's the book series, kind of like retroactively, because it's all about playing miniatures. They want an excuse for why you should be able to fight people who looked exactly like you, so you didn't have to buy another army. And so they made Chaos Forces, which is kind of the Lovecraftian thing. It's an early edit to it, but they had a Horus heresy that took place 10,000 years before the setting takes place. And they didn't give too many details, but kind of flushed out after that. And it's very inspired by, I would say Event Horizon is definitely one of the inspirations for it. But
yeah, it's Dune the Clone Wars of 40K. Yeah. They kept saying Horus Heresy, and then they finally decided to write the story.
Yeah, and they popped out what was supposed to be a trilogy of 3 books, but it was so popular, and this is like 2007, I think, that they forgave the first one. Same time Sunshine came out. And then it was so popular, they ended up doing another, again, 63 books total. And the last one just came out at the end of February, end of January.
When are we getting the 40K miniseries?
I gather we are. That's Henry Cavill, and I will say he seems to usually get involved in some fun ones to watch.
Oh, he's such a nerd. Oh my god.
Yeah, but he's so handsome.
He's involved. It'll only last 5 years. I'm sorry.
Only? I'll take one season of good 40K.
Star Trek show, except for the original, was ever good for its 4 seasons. They need time to age and get better. So if he buys that for it, I think it might do a little bit better. We have so many abandoned, like, 1-season science fiction shows that.
How can the show get better without Tasha Yar?
I would like Henry Cavill. Do you think Henry Cavill would be a good Gaunt for Gaunt's Ghost? I mean, because that has to be the most popular. That would be the easiest one to adapt because all the characters are normal humans.
Well, I think it's because Dan Abnett, the main writer for that particular series, Gaunt's Ghost, he's the most popular writer, and he's the way to do the first and last book for the Horus Heresy too.
Correct.
He's the only one who really does anything besides Space Marines there, and he does more human characters. And it's, to me, those are always more appealing, but it tends to be very heavy on the Space Marines. You don't get to see too much of the alien factions, and humans of the regular variety are there to get stepped on, which is appropriate for the setting.
Who would pick the Space Marine team? I would only pick Team Monster.
Oh,
the Space Marines are monsters, Maynard.
When I played, I did the very regular humans, the Imperial Guard, who get stepped on left and right, and also had more expensive miniatures. So you need
they're superhumans.
Space Marine, and they cost 3 times as much for the models.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. Yeah, dude, Space Marines are genetically engineered humans. They have like 7 livers, 5 lungs, 6 hearts. They could spit acid. Basically, any author who...
You guys are nerds.
It's a very heavy example, though, of both Flanderization as well as like power creep. It's
the Flanders is this.
Yeah. Well, it's because every author who gets their hand on Space Marines wants to do their own thing with them. So
don't they all just end up making them curse and basically make them predator?
I'm looking forward to it with that same trepidation I do whenever somebody starts talking about turning something I enjoy into it. But it's like when someone's just doing Glenn Cook's Black Company. Great book series. I don't think it's going to do well on TV, but I heard it got options, so we'll see. Kind of same for Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn, which...
Oh, God, don't get me started on Mistborn, brother.
Yeah. I remember people saying, like, well, George R. R. Martin, they killed the characters off so many. It was like, compared to a typical fantasy series, very few major characters die in George R. R. Martin stuff. Sanderson's kills off the entire cast.
I know. The way the first Mistborn book ends, I'm like, I thought he was the main character. What the hell?
No, go ahead, Schlender. Finish your thing.
Oh, he's going to be going for.
I'm done. Like everyone came for sci-fi.
I want to know what Isaac's been up to lately. I want to know what's been keeping him busy.
Well, he's the president of space.
Is that official? Space president?
Well, no, I'm the president of the National Space Society, which is actually the International Space Society. We've kept the name National Space Society, and that I started doing last year. I just brought 3 kids in the house they were fostering to adopt. And I said, we know you're busy, but would you like to be president of the National Space Society? I said, well, I'm not actually able to say no to that. So yes, I am loving it. It's a great fun thing to do. And actually, I can say this now because it won't come out for a little bit. We have done our usual awards, and the Heinlein Award, which are all most prestigious for Robert Heinlein, is being given this year to William Shatner at the Los Angeles ISDC at the end of May.
That's fantastic.
Nice. He is coming to accept it. He's also at the awards, and I've got the Pioneer Award for them myself. It's not who you give the award to, it's who shows up to get it. And we've had Elon Musk get an award from us. He came. Jeff Bezos, he came and got his.
Wow.
We have given this to so many wonderful people, and they deserve to get it. And it's just nice to see someone like Shatner getting it too. This one is obviously more of a science fiction flavor with Heinlein in it, but
yeah, of course,
it is. It's the idea of having a lifetime of contribution to encouraging people to really believe in space, and I can think of very few people who deserve it more than him. So.
I mean, Tech War alone, right?
Well, no, Tech War, he wrote some books, or I assume he wrote them, maybe ghostwritten, that were like Star Trek ones for after the film he died in. And those are actually halfway decent. Looks at the Borg for they got ruined in Voyager. But Tech War, I'm not gonna vouch for that.
Kids gotta learn about Tech War sometime.
Yeah. Well, hey, just mention it on the slide when you're giving him the award and say, hey, we're still giving this to you, but we haven't forgotten about Tech War.
No, I happen to know there were some fans of the series there, and I never quite got into it myself. But you had a lot of sci-fi, especially time travel ones from the 90s. That was like the go-to. And I was trying to think of other good science fiction movies for the inevitable, like what should we review next? And the problem is there's really not that much from the 90s. So that like the early 80s and late 70s gold mine, and then you got a bit of a dearth after that. There's really doesn't, you don't get as much good sci-fi films. And like again,
we don't like to talk about the good ones. We like to talk about the more disreputable ones. I want to talk about Red Planet and Mission to Mars and all those.
I would love to do Battlefield Earth on the grounds that it was just like doesn't deserve to be set on fire or not sometime.
You would defend it. You would defend it.
I don't know that it can be defended.
We'll try.
You could appeal it, maybe.
I mean, everyone was having fun.
It's one of those ones where it's
that was
so
the
bad
ballistic defense.
You have
You're right
to
about that.
But again, I think with Sunshine, because I did bring it up before, that's another one of those films that it's a good film, but it suffers some executive meddling, and there was so much that in so much of the 90s films for science fiction too. Like, well, we had to add something to it. And so you ironically mostly get it with something that was more of an action film like Predator, right? Predator's an action film, but it's got that alien in it. And that's what makes it cool. So it's sci-fi. And again, it's not that it's really all that good of a film, but it's a really good film. There's no real deep elements to it. So that happens to so many of those sci-fi films. You take what you can get out of them,
Yeah, that's fair. Man, I love Predator.
One movie.
Which one?
2 governors in one movie in Predator.
Oh, yeah. Ventura, too. Yeah.
To say nothing of The Running Man.
Yes, exactly. You can double it up.
Yeah. And again, another example of something that was a science fiction short story, I believe, that got turned into the film.
Yeah.
I remember actually liking that.
Stephen
I was
King
like 10 when I saw it. So, was it the Stephen King one?
Yeah, it was a Bachman.
Yes.
Richard Bachman, yes. But
it was a Bachman, sure.
It was a Bachman.
But,
was it okay? But
they still count.
Yeah. Well, in the novella, he's running all over America. He has to survive for a few months from like a hitman squad. It's not a game show like it is. Like the movie's a better realization of it, I think.
Yeah, sometimes you get that. They are not.
Yeah.
I would say that about Blade Runner, for instance. It's a different novel than Can Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, and Philip K. Dick is a magnificent writer, right? But I think of that as one of his decent stories. It's not like it's one of his best or worst. The film is just deeper. It's better. It's a nicer look. But at the same time, it bombed, didn't it? I think it didn't do very good at the box office, and yet it's a cult classic now.
That's because they had that voiceover. They took that.
Oh yeah. I would say usually, it took me a long time to. I love the soundtrack off of that film. It's the best soundtrack from sci-fi. But if you gotta do a voiceover on top of your film, you miss some elements there explaining what need to be in the film.
I think it was
especially when you hear how much Harrison Ford hates it, right? Well, it's in his voice.
It was clearly to drum up the noir type of the theme. That he's supposed to be very detective-y.
Spades,
and it does hit that element.
That's
Dark
what
City
going for.
Oh, Dark City is a good one. We should do that on the show.
Kiefer Sutherland does it's because it's before 24. That's a good one. I don't know if I'd have a hard time prosecuting or defending that one because it's got a lot of it's on the edge, but it's a good one in many ways.
Well, these
are
all
another one, late 90s. Yeah,
I mean, and that now you have to pick just one to recommend, right? Because we always ask our guests for recommendations for movies that you think people should see. So,
flawless segue, man.
Is a movie that you think people should see?
Dark City, because it's underappreciated.
Yes, good pick. Good pick.
Why is it underappreciated?
Because it, and same for 13th Floor, came out before The Matrix did, and The Matrix did do that part a little bit better, but this is a film that's got that film noir vibe from Blade Runner. It is that classic gritty detective film, but it's got that scary, unexpected tone to it, and not like an M. Night Shyamalan tone. Well, at least M. Night Shyamalan when he was doing good ones anyway. It's got a real surprise element to it that you're not expecting to see, and it does really just kind of change your viewpoint in the movie at that point. It's worth watching.
No, that is
100% agree. Great film. Great recommendation.
I think I've seen that one, and I think I have.
I guarantee you, Derek's told you the whole movie at least twice because he loves that movie.
That's entirely possible. Big Ben, what's your recommendation?
I'm going to go with another Sam Neill. It's not a film. It's technically a miniseries. But again, the Letterboxd counts it, so will I. It's Merlin from 1998. Admittedly...
Fantastic.
Admittedly, some of it is very bad and cringy, even at the time. You could blame some of it on the limited budget, where they're taking big swings, but that doesn't account for all of the very strange choices they made, particularly Martin Short. I'm sorry, I love you, but some of those were weird.
That said, Clifford?
Yes, no. We were just talking about this.
The special effects budget is not good.
His Asian impersonation is not friendly. It has not aged well.
Oh, really? I wouldn't expect that.
That said, the love for the Arthurian legend is there, and it attempts to encompass all of it as faithfully as it can. Not just Camelot, but the events preceded Arthur as well. I'm hard-pressed to think of another King Arthur film that more accurately captures not just the details, but the feel of it. Camelot is great, but it's a musical. Monty Python is great, but it's a silly comedy. Almost every other take tries to put some weird layer on top of it to differentiate themselves. And the layer that Merlin applies to it feels more apt to the period, with it being more focused on paganism versus Christianity, which how can it not? You have a story with a wizard who does actual magic, yet their king sets out for the Holy Grail. Of course that theme should be at the forefront. And anyone who knows of a good King Artie movie out there that more accurately represents Le Morte d'Arthur, while still managing to be entertaining, please let me know, because I'm desperately wanting a great King Arthur film. But until then, I think this is as close as we've gotten.
So is this Ben's long way of telling us you've never seen Excalibur? Is that what I'm hearing?
No, Excalibur is weird. It's dark. It's unnecessarily sexy.
I think you do make a good point. When you got an IP that they've really used a lot, they always put a variation on it. So you got something that has been done, so we have to put a completely new spin on it. And I understand you don't want to just do a repeat, but everything with the Arthurian legend is so well known that they try to put some new tone on it. It's all new. It's like with Sherlock Holmes films. They can't do one of the classics anymore, so they have to change it up. And I get it. I understand. But sometimes that's when people just say, we're just going to make it right by the book, just like the play. I don't need to change Shakespeare. He's good as is,
So we need Kenneth Branagh to do King Arthur, is what you're saying.
No, I want Peter Jackson to do it. I want to do a trilogy.
We can't afford Peter Jackson. We're getting Kenneth Branagh.
Pedro Jackson.
Pedro Jackson.
Non-union Mexican equivalent. Schlenzo, what have you got for us?
Oh, man. Well, these have been banger recommendations.
I bet until now.
I know, but I gotta say, so there's a YouTube channel that's probably right next to Isaac's, and it's called Dust. And what this channel does is specializes in short science fiction features that highlight small content creators. And I have to say, if you go on their channel, there's so many gems to pick from. Thankfully, Tubi, the best streaming service, has curated several of these shorts and put together a series of collections. And I am recommending one of those collections now. It's called Dust Collection Animation. This group of short films features not only stellar animation, but legitimately good sci-fi, the kind that makes you think and feel. We deal with immortality, robots, deep space communication, technology advancing without us, and all of these shorts land in their own special way. I am excited to watch more Dust content, and it has been a real joy to see that there's even a collection dedicated, are you ready for this, Maynard? To robots. So stay tuned for my next recommendation, am I right? Again, these are all on YouTube or in the collected formats on Tubi.
I would definitely second Dust as just a great collection of short science fiction ideas being brought into it. And there is, I will say, a lot of just generally, it's a place where people can still be creative. You don't see too much cliche there. Not everything is a home run, but they make a lot of ones where it would never get a concept like that out into a mainstream science fiction film.
Exactly. It's like they're trying,
Is
it's
it like a Love, Death, and Robots?
Yeah, a little bit. The ones I watched and recommending, they are all animated, so it kind of feels like you're watching Love, Death, and Robots. The best one was a German one about this old guy who's living with a robot, and the robot's taking him all across the galaxy trying to find a suitable replacement to Earth. But the robot is so dialed into Asimov's laws, he's like, well, the moisture content's not quite right, so it'll put you in danger. We got to find a different planet. It's really well done.
That does sound fun.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, please remain calm.
No.
I repeat, please remain calm. That's right. Dead calm. For my recommendation this week, Sphere. No, not really. It's 1989's Dead Calm. Starring Sam Neill, Billy Zane, and Nicole Kidman before she started ruining your AMC moviegoing experience. A grieving couple sailing around the Pacific Ocean come across a stranded stranger aboard a sinking ship. But can they trust him? The short answer is no, they cannot.
No.
After all, the movie has to happen. And it's Billy freaking Zane, for Christ's sake. Has he ever played a trustworthy character in a single movie? The short answer is no. This movie had really gone under my sonar until I found out The Simpsons did a parody of it in Treehouse of Horror 21. Now, while you might be asking what I was doing watching Treehouse of Horror 21, I think a better question is what were they doing parodying an obscure movie from 1989 in their Halloween episode in 2010? Whatever the reason, the movie actually has some pretty decent performances. You get to hear Sam and Nicole's real accents, unfortunately. Fresh in your cheek, governor! It was filmed around the Great Barrier Reef, and the ocean-based shots are well executed. As for the plot itself, well, it leans a little bit more hacker than thriller, so don't go in ready to do a lot of thinking, okay? But that's all right, because we need that. All of us. That indescribable feeling we get when the lights begin to dim and we go somewhere we've never been before. Not just entertained, but somehow reborn. Together. Dazzling images on a huge silver screen. Sound that I can feel. Somehow heartbreak feels good in a place like this. Our heroes feel like the best part of us. And the stories feel perfect and powerful. Because here they are. They are. You were supposed to cut me off and then you just let me do the whole thing? You're monsters.
What's going on?
Ryan, I hear you have some sort of really big milestone for us.
I do. My recommendation this week is our 1,000th so far. Isn't that amazing?
As long as Ben counted right.
It's a recent discovery from a homegrown DIY filmmaker, Matt Farley, 2022's Magic Spot. In its own low-key, low-budget way, it follows a deceased man's nephews and nieces who uncover the power of time travel, which the uncle uses as a way to teach them a poem. It's damn hard to summarize in a substantive way, but it's shaggy and charming and inventive and silly and just plain very good. Go in knowing nothing and you might be pleasantly surprised. Maybe, like me, you'll go down a rabbit hole and eagerly devour the rest of Farley's available filmography. Dylan will be happy to learn that Magic Spot is currently streaming on Tubi.
Hey!
You can find at least 2 other films, Don't Let the River Beast Get You and Freaky Farley. That's Magic Spot, a magic movie, or something. It's weird.
Ryan, I've actually watched Don't Let the River Beast Get You. Holy shit, that's funny.
And did it get you? Or that,
I'm not at liberty to say. Anyway, I watch this other guy's movies. Awesome recommendation.
I mean, of course, Matt Farley's budget's going to be low. He lives in a van down by the river.
Well, the river beast got him. What do you want, Maynard?
That's right. And with that, we are all out of show, but we want to thank our guest, Isaac Arthur. Thank you so much for joining us, Isaac.
Always glad to be on, guys.
I know. Next time we're going to have you on for Sphere or Battlefield Earth or
something
almost
better.
Certainly not something better. Probably not. I'm trying to push us the other way. I want to go worse. This was a little bit too good, maybe.
No, Sphere will be a good corrective, I feel.
I don't know about Sphere. Then I'll have to watch it.
I've been make Isaac sweat at least a little bit. Come on.
Sphere would be a hard one. It's very Michael Crichton-y. It's the movie is good in its own way. The book is good in a different way. So
Crichton doesn't have a good track record here. We already took down Congo.
No, that's right. It's an uphill battle right from day one.
That's true.
Wait, did they make timelines into a movie too?
They did,
Yes,
but
they
we
did.
try not to talk about that.
Oh, no, we're going to talk about it. Maynard put it on the list.
My dad loves that
To
movie.
be fair, the book
Oh my
isn't one of
God.
his better ones either. So.
If
Well,
we
just
actually
gonna-
did that movie, my dad would actually listen to this podcast for the very first
Ooh,
time.
we're gonna have to do
Sold.
it. That's
Sold.
it. There you go. And everyone else will have to tune in for that episode too, as the Reels of Justice keep turning.
Count it.
Eyes!
Please follow us on Twitter at Reels of Justice, Instagram Reels of Justice, and Facebook.com/Reels of Justice.